We are with Tim Murtaugh, the communications director for the Trump campaign. Tim, thank you, sir, very much for being with me.
You bet, John. Good to be with you.
I have to ask you, with the last name Murtaugh, I know that you are the grandson of Danny Murtaugh. And some of us with gray hair can certainly remember your grandfather and the world champion Pittsburgh Pirates that he managed both in 1960 and 1971. You must have grown up, even though you didn't grow up in Pittsburgh, you must have some affinity to Pittsburgh and its baseball team.
Oh, absolutely. We spent an awful long time, a lot of time in Pittsburgh. I grew up in the Philadelphia area, which is near where my grandfather was born in Chester, PA. But having, his job was in Pittsburgh, and we spent an awful long time there, a lot of time there. And I still have relatives in the Pittsburgh area, and of course, still love the Pirates. Still a huge Pirates fan, and it was a great way to grow up as a kid. I'm the oldest of 6 grandchildren that he had, and so I have the clearest memories of him, I believe, as compared to my cousins. And this behind me on the wall here, as you mentioned it, that's a team photo of your world champion 1960 Pittsburgh Pirates, and led by Vern Law and Roberto Clemente, and of course Bill Mazeroski with the famous home run in the bottom of the 9th of Game 7, which is still the only World Series to ever end on a home run in the bottom of the 9th of Game 7. And so still a Pirates fan, love PNC Park. It's the best ballpark in the major leagues, if you ask me. So it always makes me feel pretty good when people still remember Grandpop, and I know he loved Pittsburgh and Pittsburgh loved him. Maybe one day we'll see him in the Baseball Hall of Fame, who knows?
Well, I sure hope so. He certainly deserves to be there. Let me ask you this, Tim, because of your role with the Trump-Pence campaign. President Trump has spent a lot of time here in Western Pennsylvania. We're not like Philadelphia. We're more Midwest than East Coast. Why do you think President Trump is going to win, as he did in 2016? Why do you think he will win in this region this year in 2020?
I think it's clear without question that it was under President Trump's leadership that the American economy reached such unprecedented heights before it was artificially interrupted by the coronavirus. And he is clearly the leader to take us back to that position again. You just look at all the promises he made in 2016 that he kept. You're talking about getting rid of the failed, unfair NAFTA trade deal with Canada and Mexico. People said, Joe Biden and others who voted, by the way, Joe Biden voted for NAFTA, said it couldn't be done, that you couldn't get rid of NAFTA. Well, he did it. He struck a newer, better deal with Mexico and Canada, and he knows that it was important also to stand up to China because China had been robbing the United States blind. President Trump has been a great defender of the manufacturing industry and for blue-collar workers' jobs, union member jobs. They know that he is fighting for them. That's why they were with him in 2016, and that's why they'll be with him again this November. The president's record on job creation, particularly as it relates to the industries that Western Pennsylvania depends upon, his record is impeccable, and he is the one who will do it a second time.
Well, let me ask you about one of those industries that's very important out here. Natural gas and the petrochemical business that's being constructed in Beaver County, right up the road here. How important has the president's positions been on this issue for him politically in running for re-election out here?
Well, I mean, it is beneficial politically, certainly, but it's also the right thing to do. President Trump is a great champion of all the fossil fuel industries. That's oil, coal, and natural gas. And in Pennsylvania, natural gas is so important. The fracking industry is so important for job creation and injects billions of dollars into the Pennsylvania state economy. And we know how strong it is and how vibrant it is in Western Pennsylvania. And he will be an absolute defender of that fracking industry. And there's no question that his opponent, Joe Biden, will not. They'll say what he might, when he's in Western Pennsylvania, he might tell you that he's a friend of natural gas, but you cannot embrace the Green New Deal at the same time you support natural gas, because the Green New Deal requires the extinction of these fossil fuel industries, and Joe Biden just can't do both things at the same time. So voters in Western PA will have a clear choice between Donald Trump, who is an obvious champion of the natural gas industry, and Joe Biden, who really owes his allegiance to environmental extremists who want to wipe it out.
Let me ask you about another issue that's important. I remember back, I guess it was in 2008, that Senator Barack Obama got himself in a little bit of political trouble by describing people out here as folks with guns and Bible. Let me ask you about the Bible side, because morality is always an issue for a lot of folks. How important is it that the presidential candidate have a moral compass?
I think that's important to a lot of voters, and President Trump clearly does have a moral compass. He's a Christian man, and let me tell you, he wakes up every single morning, and the first thought in his head as he looks forward to the decisions that he makes every day is what is best for America. That's what really drives President Trump, and you can see what he's doing. He's standing up for America in every decision he makes, whether it's in international trade, as we just discussed, standing up to China and striking better deals for American workers here at home, or on the national stage, making difficult decisions to take out major terrorists like Qasem Soleimani, and doing things that project American power around the world. You know, we're not being taken advantage again around the world like we used to be. We were the world's patsy for the longest time, making sure that our allies in NATO pay their fair share. And the United Nations, the United States is always paying the freight for these things and then getting kicked around by these organizations. And so the president has a very true and very clear moral compass. And every day that compass is guiding him to make decisions on what's best for America. And I would tell your viewers that if there are folks who are Christians or Catholics and are guided by pro-life beliefs, that the president is the strongest pro-life president that we have ever had. He has defunded Planned Parenthood. He has appointed judges to the federal bench and 2 fantastic conservative Supreme Court justices. He is the best friend and ally that the pro-life movement has ever had in the White House. So if faith and direction is a prime issue for voters, President Trump is clearly their candidate.
Do you think that Joe Biden has a similar moral compass?
Well, I mean, I think Joe Biden is probably a nice fellow. I've never met him, but he is beholden to the anti-abortion, the abortion lobby. He's beholden to NARAL and Planned Parenthood and things like that. And so I don't know how you can go to the faith community and say, I am with you, when in fact you're open to abortion right up until the time of birth. I mean, those are real factual issues, and I think a Democrat very often tries to hide behind those things, and when they're speaking to, say, Catholics, for example, try to say that they're with the Catholics. At the same time, they are completely amenable to abortion on demand, practically. And so those 2 things don't square. I'm not going to question Joe Biden's faith or whether or not he is a moral man. I just think he is the wrong person to be president of the United States.
And then finally, Tim, let me ask you about an important constituency that at least some of the polling suggests that Joe Biden has had some challenges with, and that's younger voters. Can you explain to me why you think President Trump is going to win younger voters over Vice President Biden?
Well, I think first, the president has built a campaign that is built on data and technology, and we're better suited and better able to reach younger voters on the mediums with which they communicate. I mean, the president is well known as a worldwide master of the use of Twitter, and the president's campaign is technologically savvy and will be able to reach voters through those different social media platforms. Secondly, young voters care very much about the future economy and being able to have good paying jobs and get into long-lasting careers. And the president's record of job creation, he made it a situation where not only was it a good time to find a better job than the one you already had, he made it a great time to get out of a job and into a career. And I think that's what younger people are looking for. They want to know that there's a strong future and that there's going to be something that they can go into that will be lucrative enough for them to be able to comfortably support themselves and their families. And that's President Trump's record. There's no question about that. I would also point out something about a lot of the voters that President Trump attracted in Pennsylvania that Joe Biden is going to ostensibly compete for. You know, we saw in 2016, Hillary Clinton talked about the deplorables, putting half of the Trump voters into that basket of deplorables, as she said. And we know that Joe Biden is going to have a hard time drawing votes from the hardworking, blue-collar Americans who supported President Trump last time. In one of his fundraising events that he had online the other day, he said he wasn't even going to try, and said very clearly that he thinks that too many of President Trump's supporters are racist and xenophobes. votes. And so there you have it. He's making the Hillary Clinton mistake all over again. He's writing off entire segments of the American population as people that he does not want to even reach out to. It's bad politics. It failed Hillary Clinton, and it'll fail Joe Biden again.
I guess my final question is really more of a projection or a wish. When are we going to stop doing Zooming campaigning and get back to the real campaigning? It's got to be very difficult. I know it is for the Democrats as much as the Republicans to try to campaign for president of the United States on this basis.
Well, it's a different situation, that's for sure. And the president has a job to do. He's taking care of the health of the American people and also trying to safeguard the economy at the same time. And we're not doing those large rallies like everyone was used to and like the president enjoys so much. But as I said, the campaign was built on data and technology, and we were better able to shift into an all virtual setting than anybody else. Since March 13th, which is when we started working remotely, our volunteers have made over 20 million phone calls to voters across the country in key states like Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania certainly included, and maybe many of your viewers have received some of those phone calls. We've also recruited over 300,000 new volunteers. We have new unique online programming that goes on at 8 p.m. Eastern every single night across our social media channels, and every one of our broadcasts has gotten over 1 million unique viewers and some more than 2.5 million. So our campaign is, I think, producing at an even greater level than we were before we went into lockdown, because it really caused us to focus. Now, I know that the president wants to get back out on the campaign trail. He intends to get back out there and do the rallies that he is so well known for, because he's so great at connecting with the American people and speaking to them directly in person. And he wants to do that. And we intend to do that, get back out on the campaign trail as soon as it is safe.
Well, Tim Murtaugh, grandson of the late, great Danny Murtaugh, that many of us here in Pittsburgh have such fond memories of. Thank you, sir, very much for spending time with me this morning. We really appreciate that.
You bet it, John. Thank you very much, and I'll come back anytime.
Just because the weekend starts doesn't mean our commitment to excellence stops. Wake up to KDKA TV News Saturday and